Dr. Janet DeMoore, Assistant Professor in the Division of Health Behavior and Health Promotion at the College of Public Health at Ohio State University. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Now, we're going to talk about the, I'm sure, very complicated issue of what happens to cancer patients in terms of subsequent work. About two-thirds of cancer patients today become long-term survivors. What do we know about how many of them return to the workplace, and what kind of factors affect that decision for them?
So the estimates of how many survivors return to work really vary, just because of the nature of the studies that have been done. However, we do know that approximately 20% of cancer survivors experience workplace limitations or limitations in their ability to work up to 5 years after their diagnosis. Although most survivors do return to work, we have a sizable proportion of people who are having difficulties. And as far as the factors that are associated with returning to work, the research that's been done shows that people in physically demanding jobs are less likely to go back to work. People who are older at the time of their cancer diagnosis are less likely to go back to work. And then there's some things that we know about that are helpful for people who wish to return to their jobs, such as having a flexible schedule, and also working in a job that's considered more white collar, so where you know, you're primarily sitting behind a desk, and there aren't a lot of physical demands associated with the job. People employed in those types of positions have an easier time going back to work. But to be honest, our understanding of why people decide to return to work or decide not to return to work is kind of limited, and studies are now being done to try to get at those issues, which are really critical.
And going back to your original statistic, you're saying that 80% of these long-term survivors do go back to work. How much do we know about them? That is, what kind of difficulties they have, even though officially they're, quote, back at work?
We know a little bit. We know that among people who go back to work, do tend to experience some difficulty with completing physical tasks and also with cognitive tasks such as concentrating, keeping up with others, things of that nature. But again, we're just beginning to understand what the experience is like for cancer survivors who do in fact go back to work.
Your comments about physical issues and even cognitive issues intuitively are not surprising. How much do we know about, for lack of a better word, social issues, bias issues, interaction issues, any problems for cancer patients in that arena?
You know, we know that overall, discrimination against cancer survivors in the workplace is pretty rare, but it does still happen. And examples of that discrimination being firing someone because of their cancer diagnosis, or firing them because they've taken too much time off due to their cancer, to other sort of maybe less serious forms of work discrimination, such as passing somebody over for a promotion, or moving them to an assignment that's less desirable. I think what happens is employers and coworkers have preconceived ideas about what the cancer survivor is able to do and what their capacity for work is, and those biases then translate into how that person is treated, and how they're sort of promoted within their job.
Do we have any sense? Oh, excuse me. I'll interrupt by asking, do we have any sense of how many companies today are equipped in any special way to deal with cancer survivors coming back to the workplace, or do they rely on existing mechanisms in their human resource department, for example?
I think formal return to work programs are pretty rare, although to be honest I don't have specific statistics on the number of companies who would have such programs. But I think what's more common is that people tap into existing resources through their jobs, such as employee assistance programs, tapping into short and long-term disability insurance if they have that coverage, taking advantage of, for example, the Family Medical Leave Act to take time off. So it's my impression that people mainly work within the resources and constraints that are existing in their job.
Well, I have to confess that this is a topic I have not thought much about because, fortunately, we haven't had to deal with it in our family, and I don't take care of cancer patients per se. So it's been interesting to just realize that this is an issue we need to deal with, and you've been very helpful in reminding us of that. So we thank you for being with us this morning.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure.